Welcome everyone to this fifth session of Future DiverCities Practice and Knowledge Sharing cycle of seminars. These seminars are a way for the Future DiverCities partner to share some of the practices and also the great minds they have encountered in their journey within the project. But somehow this is a room with an open door to everyone that might be interested on the topics and themes we try to investigate all together, and on which we try to really share practices from different countries and from different pilots of the project. So every month we touch a different theme. This month, this fifth session is dedicated to the thematic of collective narratives and identities. In this conversation, we'll explore how storytelling, when practiced collectively, can shape, nurture, preserve community identity. And let's say our focus here lies on deep connection between narrative, memory, and justice. Okay, so we'll try to ask to our participants what makes storytelling a tool for social justice. How do artists and communities co-create narratives that both represent and empower them? So I know it's big questions, but we'll see how it can get very practical in the let's say artistic and cultural practice on the ground. Joining us today, we have three great voices. The first one is Primavera Gomes Caldas from Marseille. Then we'll have Felipe Duarte from Berlin and Colombia, and Agnese Banti from Mugello, Italy. And each of them will bring a unique perspective on how collective memory, sound, performance, visual language can reclaim space and agency. So let's dive into how stories are told together, can become the fabric of belonging and transformation. And we start with Primavera. Primavera Gomes Caldas. She is a socially engaged art practitioner operating at the intersection of contemporary art, cultural mediation, and research. As I said, she's based in Marseille. And I don't know, maybe if we want just to share some few words on also what Future DiverCities is doing in Marseille, just as an introduction, and to give more context there. So I would leave the floor to Elizabeth and Lisa that can maybe share with us.
Hi, hello. Thank you very much, Dario. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Elisabeth. I work for the cooperative La Friche Label de Mai here in Marseille, and I coordinate the actions of Future DiverCities with my lovely colleague Lisa right next to me. Well, let's introduce your position.
Yeah, so I'm also working for the cooperative, and in the project I'm like doing the link with the social organization in the neighborhood that we are working with on the Future DiverCities project.
And to recontextualize indeed, so in Marseille, we are an experiment pilot, meaning that we have a physical pilot space where we are testing different strategies of urban regeneration of the space with the participation of local inhabitants, neighbors, social enterprises, and any ecosystem that is around us. Our space is super interesting because it's a garden. It's a kind of a hidden gem in the district. And this garden belongs to a social housing unit. And what is very wonderful in this space is that the owners, the landlords, want to open the garden to a wider community than just the people living in the housing unit. And so it's really a space for us to experiment different types of commoning practices, but also how to implement cultural and artistic creative activities to engage participation into regenerating those spaces and maintaining commoning and green spaces in the city. And very quickly on, we decided to work with Primavera on this webinar because thanks to my colleagues, I got to know her work on different projects, notably one called Recitadel, that is, I think, super interesting and can bring a different perspective to what we have been doing in Future Diversities, which obviously for 3 years we've been experimenting with loads of local participants to give them a voice and tell spaces stories in a different way.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. And so, yeah, very curious to hear what Primavera will share with us. So the floor is yours, Primavera. If you want, you can also share your screen.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So, give me 5 seconds. Tick, tick. And then slideshow. I think it's okay. I think it's good.
Yes, it works.
Perfect. So yes, nice to meet everybody. I'm very happy to be here with all of you, and I'm actually quite impatient to talk together and to discuss, because I think I'm gonna share an experience, a work experience I've been leading for the past years around heritage building. And the point for me today is to highlight the questions and the reflections that we're raising during and all along the project until now. I'm not in the project anymore, but I would like to go on with those questions and those reflections. So as you can see, I named my presentation Reclaim, Regenerate, and Cohabit. That was the keywords of the whole process of the project. And I'm going to be focusing mainly on narratives and power dynamic, meaning I could talk about lots of stuff, but I decided to really focus on that. So you might actually understand that there are lots of holes and stuff I'm not talking about, but it's on purpose, always open to talk about it later. So first of all, I'm gonna actually start by telling a story. So I'm gonna read a text that I've been writing for the past years, small text, and then I'm gonna start the presentation after. And you can read it. I'm gonna put it on the screen, share it on screen. So my point is to actually share with you my point of view, or at least from where I'm speaking. So I have a little text of a very specific situation that happened some years ago. So, leading a tour for the on-site workers of the St. Nicholas Fortress restoration project, I came face to face with the skeptical wall of those who know how to unmask masquerades. The group, mostly made up of people from Middle East and African migration backgrounds, began the visit under a great deal of tension. In this face-to-face encounter, we played our roles. It wasn't all that different from the usual tour. We each had our assigned role, and the music started. I was the Black woman guide telling them about French history, and they were the Black men workers restoring a French heritage building. Perhaps the only difference was that they knew and I knew that the hierarchy we occupied made no sense. It wasn't fair. The power dynamic was palpable. A multitude of things were at play. I was both the assimilated and the woman, the sold half-breed and the superior. Throughout the visit, they dragged their feet, glanced at each other's. Perhaps my colleagues would have interpreted it as laziness or disinterest. We were far from it. Time was passing and bodies were getting restless. The purpose of my visit was to leave gaps to be filled, not to say what they themselves could say, but nothing could be done. Their gestures said more than their words. Just as the visit changed format to focus on a discussion of military archives and the almost certainly unknown stories of those who passed through the fort, the talk got out of hand. A participant spoke. Quote, in any case, the French state is hiding the truth from us. They don't want us to know that our ancestors must have toiled here. End quote. That was it, just before the window closed. Even if it happens to be true, there is nothing to confirm or deny it at the moment. Because this story of heritage, this story of history, goes far beyond what actually happened on the site, far beyond what the stones of the monument have seen. It's the story of inscription, of recognition, of the contemporary. It's about what's being written now. But the clock was ticking. The only slot had been allocated was coming to an end. They had to get back to the work site. Ooh. So yeah, right now I'm gonna start with exposing this case study. I'm calling it case study, but I'm not a researcher. I'm talking from the position of a cultural worker that was within the institution coordinating a project. So it might be completely different if I was a like outsider or a researcher or a participant. Also, what is I think important to keep in mind is that I am talking from France, from the French context, meaning I'm talking from a context anchored in colonial history and also in social and cultural policies that are shaping the local urban planning of Marseille. And as I said, I'm going to focus on the narratives and also what is artwork inside this narrative, because I was also in charge of artist residency, and so I was actually working with artists on all the question that I'm going to raise. And by the end of the presentation, the point is for me to also ask question to the next guest of today, as they are artists, and maybe keep the discussion going on. So the project is actually an heritage building in the city center of Marseille. It's a former fortress exploited by military troops for the past 300 centuries. In 2001, a back to work program started to work there and started to work on the restoration of the building. Therefore, the fort has been under restoration with more than 100 trainees from precarious background, meaning they were actually almost living there, let's say working every day on an everyday basis there. And in 2018, a new project arose in this fortress, which was a cultural project. And the objective of this project was to reclaim this space and turn this space from a military building to a cultural space open to everybody, and with the objectives to, let's say, use untold narratives to regenerate and reclaim this space. So that was the whole objective. To have a small context, because I'm going to talk about this thing of writing together history, that will be the main point of the presentation. What does it mean to write history together? And therefore, is it actually to regenerate the space, and is it a tool to reclaim by the end the space? So, small context, this place, even if it's 300 years of history, only one architect, national architect, and one historian wrote about the building, and it was always either an architectural point of view or a very general historical point of view. Meaning that there was and there is still lots of holes, and nobody actually studied or worked on very specific periods. So when I say holes, I say like huge holes. In this context, the project decided to bring together communities, bring together people that might have connection with the history of this building, knowing that as it was military, I mean, it was quite, let's say, unknown for the public. So we decided to maybe start to see around, maybe talk around, and we actually were approached by first groups of people, for groups of citizens who were, let's say, the one that were the most attached to the place, as they were families of how do you call that, families of war veterans. This is maybe the main point of the first part of this presentation, is that we were bringing together different type of people, but the main ones, the one that were more invested, was the one that were already organized, meaning that they were already having non-profit organization, already working on the history of Second World War, etc., etc. In this place where we had this kind of participants, the point was to also try to find other type of participants of other type of communities with different type of narratives. Now I would say that what I've been observing, because I've been working on this topic of like citizen narratives for the past 6, 7 to 10 years, is that most of the time the institution that is implementing this type of project is starting with a kind of fantasy of being a neutral ground where everybody is brought together to happily share a diversity or share a plurality of narratives, meaning that we start with this idea that everybody is going to come together and on the same level and are going to say a lot of stuff, are going to share lots of narratives, and they're going to happily be there together. Obviously, especially when you are a worker, you know that it's not what's happening. And what is, in my opinion, very interesting is the power dynamics that start there. That was even starting before the project. And in this case, what was starting is that some of the group that were the most organized had their own agendas, own objectives, as well as the institution itself that was having also its own agendas. In the middle of that, all the stakeholders with their own agendas would actually be part of a big power dynamic or a big power hierarchy, where most of the time some groups, communities, people would be seen as too trivial or too not important enough to be classified as important. And then in this project, we had to actually work with that. What does it mean to have also power dynamic, not only between the institution and the group of people, the communities, but also huge power dynamic in between the participants. I will try to give examples so that it's not too so for example, what is interesting is that this military space was often seen, and that was also supported by the institution, as a jewel, as a diamond, like a diamond of the architecture of Marseille, but also a diamond of the military architecture of France, meaning that there was this huge impression and imagination around this huge building built by a very known architect of the history of France that should be preserved, that is part of this, like, let's say, group of amazing buildings that we need to preserve. When we started actually to work, lots of groups were agreeing with that, because it means that if they work with us, they work with a jewel, they work with a diamond, they get preserved. Other group or other communities would be saying that they would be the ones that would be also saying to themselves that they're not so important, but those people would say, their neighbors would say that actually, from their point of view, it is not that much of a diamond. It's actually a huge garden that is close to their house and where their kids grew up, where they were playing football, doing barbecues, falling in love, doing activities with birds, and so on and so on and so on. And so the first point of working on those narratives was actually to how do you put together these huge narratives that is also a little bit like the national narrative of a very diamond to preserve, and another narrative that is actually a very day-to-day useful place that is not so incredible, but it's also something that is part of the people everyday life, and that don't need to be preserved, in a sense protected, but need to be used by those people the same way as they have been using it before. A little bit again of context to open a cultural project means also to control the access of it. And the question of access became a huge, I'm not going to say point of conflict, but a huge question mark in this project, because this place was actually partially used by neighbors before, as it's often the case actually in this kind of heritage building, also in other countries, where people, because, you know, public space is public space in the sense that people would actually do whatever they want, the way they want, and it's pretty okay. And bringing a new cultural project, actually aiming to open to everybody, but not actually open to everybody the same way neighbors were actually having access to it before. So this is one example. I also have another example around the question of World War II. It's quite, I mean, you already know, just so you know, I'm not from Europe, so I'm not also talking from background where actually I was raised with the European narrative. And World War II is something quite big and quite important, especially this year and with everything that is happening around us right now. And let's say the will of the institution was actually to press and to work as fast as possible on this topic of Second World War. And part of the communities that were families of war veterans were really into going this way. However, other people, other communities were also saying, well, Second World War is not the main point. Second World War is one part, one period among others. So how do you make the choice of what is more important? And that is, wait, I'm talking, but not passing the slide. Wait. Sorry, it's a bit late. So the discussion became who is benefiting from prioritizing the narratives. Those communities benefits on it, those institution benefits on it. What was the purpose of digging those untold narratives? Sorry, I'm reading my notes. Yes, so in the end, not in the end, but at some point, the questions were really going into the direction of who is right and who should be first, like a bit like a competition. Obviously, it's also a competition that is actually implemented, in my opinion, by the institution, because the institution is actually having this neutral ground where everybody should be together. And I think it's quite interesting to understand what is this power relationship between institution and communities, as well as communities between themselves. So because of those conflicts, let's say so, the project decided that maybe the most important is not to dig the truth, but for the narratives to be a starting point to reflect on what is happening right now and what's gonna happen for the building, like what can the building be the symbol of in the future. Meaning that then maybe it would have been easier to have the communities work together and actually get together and discuss not about, oh, this happened and that happened, but discuss about, okay, what do we learn and what do we want for the future in this space, and how do we cohabit? Which is for me the difference between let's say reclaiming and cohabitate, because then cohabitate, you actually have this thing of working together. And that's the most difficult part. I'm gonna go a bit 36, I'm talking too much. So at some point when we decided on that, anyway, it didn't become easier, obviously, because again, because of the power relationship already there, in the end, the loudest was the winner. Every time, like the one with the most power would always win the competition for what do we want for the future, what is happening right now. I mean, that was going on and on and on and on. And who is benefiting. I'm again going on about it because apart from this work on narratives and history, that's something that I've been going across a lot of what is beneficial for whom, and at first what is beneficial for the institution. And that's something that we have been working on, especially with the question of what do you do with the narrative once you actually collected it? Like once you actually extracted it from the communities, what do you do with it? And the answer that we were trying to give was to say that actually maybe the best options would be to put it in public space, meaning in maybe municipality archives, which was our answer to what are commons. And our answers was that it's like public power that can only manage commons, because in the end we asked ourselves a lot of questions about if private bodies manage commons, is it really actually commons? Which is I mean, I don't have answers. Another part that is, in my opinion, quite interesting is the image of the choir during the project, that we want to make a choir. We want everybody to actually sing together, to like live and work in harmony, to be in tune. But well, this thing of choir also means that you are harmonizing, meaning that you are, and that's would be a definition that I would give based on my experience, that harmonizing is also flattening conflict, or keeping conflict for arrive, or at least makes a narrative the less tense and the less hurtful as possible, so that everybody can actually sing in harmony. And in reality, in the project, that also meant that every time a narrative was actually hurting the present, meaning that it was getting the situation tense in the present, the point would be to a little bit flatten it so that it doesn't hurt nobody. So at some point, I started, and also other people started to actually question this idea of choir. And how can dissonant voice actually live in the same space? Can this happen actually? 139. Okay. Which brings me to the question of participatory practices, and I wanted to actually tackle one question, with this, or what is inclusivity? That is something that is quite important for me, because from the perspective of the institution, remember that I always speak from this perspective. Inclusivity or inclusiveness is always coming from the institution as a body that is the one that is wanting to include people that institution is excluding. Meaning that if you get the other point of view, you turn the view around and you think from the person who need apparently to be included, you have a body, someone, not an individuality, but someone or a body that is wanting to actually correct the fact that this body is excluding people. And when this body is actually starting to want to include, this inclusion is actually running by the rule of the one who is including, meaning that this body is going to decide the condition of this inclusion, is going to decide the criteria of access of this inclusion, is going to decide the rules, which I'm going to maybe borrow this concept of conditional hospitality, meaning that the one who is hosting is the one who is setting the rule, and the guest who is arriving in the house always need to respect the rules, and therefore the power dynamics are already set, and the conflict there cannot arrive, or if it's arriving under the condition of the host. I will let that for discussion later. Last one, I'm gonna try to go a bit fast. Before going to the last slide, I wanted to go and talk about the artwork and artist work, and maybe enter these artists' work through the question of orchestra conductor, to keep running with this choir image. What is the role of artists there? From an institutional point of view, what I've been saying for the past year is that most often artists are invited to actually be orchestra conductor, meaning that they are going to be the one that are expected to either flatten, either harmonize, either get together, and then, in my opinion, are going to shoulders responsibilities that might not be theirs. And also, this for me also talks a lot about what is art in the opinion of this type of project. What art should be, at least in France, I kind of observe that art is seen as a kind of messiah, like a tools of pacification, mainly. I mean, it's not always the case, but I wanted to share this point of view that artists are always expected to come and to bring people together, and so that everything works well, very well, and everybody's happy by the end of it. And I feel like this is very much a colonial tool of pacification, this idea of harmonization. But my main question would be, and that has been the question for every time I was hosting artists in this kind of conditions, would be like, what are the position of artists in the middle of those power dynamics? And in between the different stakeholders, and are artists actually the same as any other stakeholders in this kind of project? I would let the other guests answer to those questions because I think they would do better than me on this topic. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Primavera. I think you put a lot on the table. It's really like having in front of us a menu of very urgent topics to talk about. But I will wait before we touch these topics, and maybe just leave the floor to the second speaker, and then we try now to have this conversation at the end. Second speaker is Felipe Duarte. He's a Colombian musician, economist, storyteller based in Berlin. His work bridges art, ancestral knowledge, and ecological advocacy. And let's say at the same time, he's an educator in global citizenship education, and his whole work somehow is aimed at sharing indigenous perspectives on the world, on the relation with nature and ourselves. But I think he can say better than anyone else. So I really leave you the floor, Felipe. Please integrate if there's anything I haven't said in introduction you want to add, and thank you.
Perfect. No, it's perfect. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm gonna share my screen now. Share. Yes, there it is. Can you see the screen already?
Not yet.
Share. Okay.
Now it goes. Yeah, perfect.
Good. Okay, so yeah, thank you again for having me, and hello to everyone who's joining today. Very nice also the open questions that were left by Primavera, and definitely I will somehow, without trying to answer, I think I will give perspective, but also I don't have an answer. Good. So I named this presentation Kawunkwawishi. Kawunkwawishi is the name. It's a name. It's a word that our elders from our traditions in La Sierra Nevada in Colombia, they say this word has the meaning of a meaning that the people from the star gave us. So it starts already in a fantasy, what I'm telling you. But this is the interesting thing where narrative is very powerful in our ancestral traditions. Because all the stories of origin, the stories of how life is created, why are we here, what it means to be human, it might look or seem like a fantasy book or like coming out of Harry Potter or the Lord of the Rings. but it is our truth. It is our story of creation. It's the principles of our life. And this word Kawunkwaushi means the new people. And it's a little bit of the story that has happened in me. I'm a musician, and I will use this role between among many other things that I do, but the thread that music has done in my life to re-encounter myself with these roots and with this narrative. So this is returning to the origin for me. This is a lagoon up in the sacred mountains of Bogota, or of the Cundinamarca territory. These territories are called páramos. They are ecosystems that are very fragile, and they manage to capture the water from the air with a velvet-like leaves that bring the water from the air into the ground, and making these places very rich in water and very important for the relationship with the rivers from the Amazons and the flying rivers, which are becoming a big topic now. People are aware of these flying rivers. They all will start up here in these mountains between 5,000 to 6,000 meters, 3,000 to 6,000 meters. And then I come to this image that is somehow, no, wait, I go back to this one. And here I was somehow living on the bottom of these mountains where the páramos are. And I was always somehow curious of the nature that is up there, because it's very unique. Only Colombia, Peru, Venezuela have this specific ecosystem. And only in Colombia there is, I think, 56 or 60 of this ecosystem in the planet. And through my path, I somehow became very connected to it. And when I was then living in London, I was studying there, master in cultural entrepreneurship, and trying to realize what is culture, what does culture actually mean. And I came with a magazine and people on the streets trying to support the indigenous people. And this is not the magazine I saw, but the magazine basically was portraying a woman, an indigenous woman, and the kid, and asking for money. They had like this phrase, support the poor or suffering indigenous people in Latin America. But actually the picture that they used was not really a picture of anyone suffering. And this is why I choose this image. Sometimes just by putting a word next to an image, it makes us think, okay, yeah, poor child, poor boy, poor kid. Oh yeah, look, it lives in this house that it's about to fall down. But actually, in my process of this reconnecting to my traditions, I realized this is actually the richness of life, and how much we've lost to understand that it has been in our traditions a decision to live in grounds made of earth and have roofs made of straw and have walls made of earth and straw and wood. It has been a decision to live like this, and it has been a decision to not to choose certain paths that we will call development. So in this path and this process that I have to say thanks and be very grateful to the elders of all the indigenous traditions that are still encouraging us to remember that everyone in Colombia at some point was native people, and that the word indigenous is not really an indigenous word. This word indigenous has been somehow a word used to separate those from the others. And I think it's beautiful what we just heard also about the narratives of power and hierarchy, because this word is already creating somehow a separation that our Western narrative gives the idea that to be indigenous is poor or is something from the past and it didn't advance at some point. Yeah, and these are the rivers that somehow moved me and touched me. And this was the river in front of which I spoke for the first time with the earth, and the earth speaking through the elders of the traditions, that have been since little kids prepared to learn how to listen to nature and its stories and its memories, made this river made with me, and I made with this river a commitment. The river was telling me, I will always be supported by nature, and I was telling the river, I will always be taking care of it. And from there, my music changed, my career changed, my studies of economics changed, my studies and research about what culture means and cultural development. It all had a different perspective. This is Luis Fernando, who was is like a brother to me, and he's the one who opened the doors, and he said, "I know you want to be here with us, but you have your world, and the important thing is that we work together and that we remember that you were also native people to the earth. No, so it's not about indigenous. It's just you were native people to the land, and you will always be." In German, I like to play with the word indigene, because it's the word for indigenous. But indigene could also be in the genes. So it's in our genes to be indigenous. It is what we should claim back. And this is the Mount Punkte. This mountain is a person, and he's the father of all the Arhuaco people in La Sierra Nevada. And it's one of what we call Cerro Tutelar, like a father-mother mountain. So to him, I also somehow communicated and agreed that I will be caring for everything. And these are the families that live there, the children going to school, all of them very, very, very happy studying. And what they study is all their sciences in terms of they study their plants, they study their dances, they study their music. And what they accepted by communal decision, was to study Spanish and mathematics. So this has been their decision to include in their school, but the rest is all their traditions and their ways. And this is the school. So as I was saying, it might seem that it's falling down, but not really. These houses hold for very long, and they want it to be like that, because if it falls down, they know they can build it again. And for them, it's better this than to use cement or to have any other ways. And there I met also certain principles, the principle of the feminine and the principle of the masculine. And with these principles came this technology, I would call it. Many traditions still in Europe, they use this, it's called a spinning wheel. And women that hold these traditions a lot in Italy, there's a lot also in Germany still, they learn how to spin. And in stories like, for example, the Sleeping Beauty, and many of these stories is a spinning wheel, one of these, that through them there's a spell, and then they fall asleep for many years until the prince comes or something like this. So this spinning wheel is not only in our indigenous tradition, but it's in many other stories, and is part of what identifies the circularity, the cyclic energy that exists. And this is what they reflect as the feminine, which is movement, cyclic is the sweet, is the reflection. And it's connected with hayu. That's a leaf that in the world is probably known as coca, the hayu, the coca leaf. And this is a woman, she's the sister of my brother Luis Fernando. She was there spinning and teaching us how to spin. And Regina, the mother, and the other sister, this is part of their sovereignty, so that they don't have to buy anything. They do their clothes or do their carrying back and everything. And this would be the masculine totem, which is connected with positive. We're speaking about polarities, not negative or positive as good or bad, but of polarities. And ecstatic, firm, bitter, decisive, and it's related with the tabaco. And this is an Orlando, one of my friends from La Sierra Nevada. And so here started somehow, after being there and spending time and years of also learning from my own traditions, then these questions came to us, and it's which planet we want to have. And based on this dream, to really dream, what is the planet that we want to have? Then we can choose the stories we want to teach. So if the planet we want to have is a planet of fantasy, then we need to choose the stories of fantasy. Which fantasy? That's what we have to decide. And the story of the origin is one for all. And here's where our elders and in our indigenous traditions, they remind us, it doesn't matter in which part of the planet you are. When you research about the ancestral ways, you will realize that all the stories of origin are one. And therefore, we don't have to invent. We just have to find them. We just have to listen to them, because we were all one. We were all organized across the planet. It was not after the discovery, it was not after this idea of Cristobal Columbus arriving. We were all knowing about the existence of each other. So they were letting me know somehow the school is the narrative is the school. What we decide to use as our narrative is the system in which our children will grow. So choose the stories that you will tell the children. We need to choose our mythology. So in this choosing the narrative, I chose the narrative of nature, which is to listen to nature and to hear her story. This is a lagoon. They're one of the lagoons in the sacred lands, and it's called Chingasa. Our elders say this is the dark place between the legs of the mother, no? Exactly like this, they say, the dark place between the legs of the mother. And they say, because right here in this mountain, in this lake, is where people are born. But if we listen beyond the specificness of the word, this lake, what they are really speaking is about lakes, about water. Is in water that we are born, and it is in a liquid in our womb, in our mother's womb, that we are born. We are people of water. Then, if we learn to listen to the story of nature, if we learn to approach a lake and be silent and listen, to learn to the birds that live around, to learn to the trees and read this book of nature, then the nature in us somehow will feel that we just have to follow its ways. And this is what we started calling the recomposition of our ancient new mythology. Is the regeneration is for us a recomposition, like a song. We don't need to write new songs. We need to recompose the songs that exist. If we were speaking about this song of origin, no? And this is somehow also the third point is a revitalization of spirit, because this dimension that we cannot see is somehow the mystery that weaves all the stories together. And this is what for all traditions is spirit, or the great mystery. And then I like to put, because this is somehow esoteric, and sometimes when I go through scientific places, it's very esoteric to explain what is a spirit. But I like this quote about Einstein: the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. And this is Albert Einstein. And then I put another one by an indigenous elder of the Lakota people, Black Elk. And he said, art is the language of the spirit. It opens the doors to soul, and invites us to remember who we are. And then there's this little quote: we are nature. Art is a new form of a ritual in which we let our ego aside to let nature speak directly. And this is Pikiuba, but Pikiuba is also me. This is the name I received in the mountain, and I put it there because I like to take somehow, not to put myself as these other wise people that have been speaking, but also to listen to the elders when they say, make this story yours. You are the character that your children will speak about. And this is somehow a little bit that is encouraged among us, and we are the people that we've been waiting for. It's part of the narrative. We are native to the earth. We are native people. We are all connected to our stories of origin, and we should start speaking like this and stop making this about what I read in other books, but rather I feel it, I realize it within myself. So with all of this process, then no more speaking, and now it's to do. And this is what we did. We started building house around Bogota. This is a rebuilding one of the ancient house, but in a territory that had lost all these traditions. This house is in Fomeke with the support of people here from Europe. They sent money to support the building of this house, bringing our brothers and sisters from the indigenous traditions to help us build together. And in the building, it was with their architecture, but also recognizing what grows in our land, because it's not the same that which grows in their land. And here are children participating and putting their hands in building this and weaving and learning to weave again, all to be able to have this house finalized. This was 4 years through 2022. And here's one of the elders already walking in this house. So it's like bringing the mythology back, but this is around Bogota. So around this capital city of Colombia that has 9 million people living, and around there, 2 hours away, 1 hour away, 2 hours away, you get this. And then growing our plants again. This is a coca plant, which at the beginning, when I told my parents, yeah, I'm chewing coca leaves, they were a bit scared of this cocaine and coca, but we have to change the narrative again. Just like tobacco, it's not tobacco what gives you cancer, would say the elders. It's just that we are already sick, but the tobacco will just manifest very fast what it's already in you. So this is how they speak. And our narratives live in all nature beings. This is what we understand. And here's a little bit of our elders. This is Mamo Luchimavi, they will be Mamo Luchimavi and Saga Rosa. They always work together, the elders, because the word of the man and the woman are very important, both of them. They need to listen to both. And this is Mamotami in La Sierra and his wife, La Saga. And the little chicken, also very important in there. And this is, again, Mamotami coming to visit our mountains. And for the first time, we were listening what elders that are taught to speak with nature were telling us back the stories of those mountains that were next to us. And he was saying what was, if it was happy, if it was sad, if it needed food, if it needed a visit, a prayer. So this is somehow my process and how it was my decision to start again. And this is starting again to walk back to this original narrative. It was to build our drums again, because as a musician, then I felt, okay, I have to build my instruments to play our ancestral flutes. And at the same time, I was playing in pubs and I was playing in concerts in little venues. And it doesn't matter where, because I was somehow telling people about this possibility. It was just a possibility. Imagine about the possibility that you can connect to your own ancestral narrative. Just imagine that. And I only had my home in that moment, and I invited people to little circles and meditate and play the flute and tell them what I was sharing. And then to the parks and wherever I was able, just meeting with people, even online, even during Corona, which actually made it very, very, people wanted to listen to story in this. And it brought us all together in circles in different countries, in Czech Republic, in Sweden, in Italy, in Spain, in Germany. People from so many different backgrounds joining just to be reminded of the possibility that the narrative that we are living in the West is not the only one that we have to choose, but we just have no alternative. So it's a question of, do you want another story? Make it. Make it. Dare to make your own story. But what if more people were agreeing on another story? And what if this other story that people are agreeing with is a story that we are not inventing, but a story that lives out there in nature? So the stories turned into dances, and we went to dance around the lakes, and our children were present. It was very important for our elders that our children are present in every activity. There's no activity for grown-ups and an activity for children. All activities should be for everyone. And if we're doing something for grown-ups that children should not learn about, then we shouldn't be doing that. This is how they say. And so the concerts keep going and the visits keep appearing in nature. This is a 900-year-old tree here in Berlin. And we were just speaking to this tree and singing to this tree. And this is a mountain on the top of a mountain here in Berlin called Victoria Park. And to this mountain, we started to bring offerings, stones. And now you go to this little tree there on the top of the mountain, and people are just coming. Sometimes I visit, and things are now hanging on the tree that weren't not there before. And our interest is to reach also the glaciers and be able to visit the glaciers and listen to the glaciers, because now I'm living in Europe. My son was born in Berlin. So I also feel that somehow the spirit put me here and said, keep doing this here. The elders are doing it already in Colombia. But these stories, through the music and through the things that you're doing, always put a little seed of this in your narrative. But don't make it the narrative of others. Make it your narrative. If people vibrate with your narrative, maybe that intrigues them to find their narrative. And this is our school of nature. So this is the place where it all started, up in the mountains. And with this I close, because to go back there to that space where it all started and to bring those stories out from there, not as a cultural appropriation, but actually as a decision of the elders, as an asking to the land and asking for permission, and to have the agreement with the earth, because the people from the Arhuaco community were not saying you are agreeing with us. They were saying in this moment you just agree with the lake and you just agree with the mountain. This is your commitment with every step that you take. It doesn't matter if you call yourself musician, artist, economist, politician. It doesn't matter. This is your commitment with that mountain, with that lake. And this is a little quote that I also wrote that I felt like sharing. The art is to live life in awareness of our nature. The great mystery is the voice that should write our narratives. And this is where I wish we could all go back to, which is to live in houses that are in nature, with a forest, with the food around, growing around, and making sure that we take again care of those mountains and those lakes that gave us life. And art is for me a way to remove this spirituality and recognize that in art itself we are communicating with realms that we per se don't really know, and we can manifest by the creation of our songs, of our poems, of our stories, of our books, of the architecture that we build. In that action, we can plant little seeds and transform already, whilst listening to this intuitive, mysterious voice. Until there, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Felipe. Thank you again here. Thank you also for bringing there with you with all these beautiful images. It has been a great journey also to follow, really. And I would really somehow connect also this last part of your intervention with the work, the practice of our next speaker, Agnese Banti. Because of course you were talking as music and art as a way to really reconnect, and also very I think it was very in line also with what Agnese will somehow share. There is this concept of recomposition, no, that you said, that I feel somehow it touched me, and I feel it can also touch some of the works that Agnese is doing. Well, Agnese Banti is a sound artist, a musician, and a singer. She's originally from the Mugello region, and then now she's based in Bologna, okay? And she works across music, audiovisual, performative, installation contexts, okay? So it's her practice is very rich. We had the chance to have her with us a couple of years ago in the artistic residencies on the Florentine Mountains at Dimora. Okay, these residencies are somehow in the rural area of Tuscany, between Bologna and Florence, in fact. And so I hope she will present what she has done with us there, but even more than that, all her practice, because I see many links with what you just said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dario, for the introduction, and hi to everyone. I'm really happy to share this webinar with you all. The topic is huge and very interesting, and it touches my practice a lot. So I'm really, really happy to join this specific webinar. And thank you for the interventions, because they were really interesting. I'm going to, of course, I will talk about the work I did with Dimora. Today, I thought of presenting as an example of what I'm doing and how what I do touches these themes through 3 works. So I will present briefly these 3 works, and the last one will be the one I did with the Future DiverCities at Dimora. And I think the link between these works is mainly an idea of chorality, of choir, not only in a sound perspective, but also in a larger perspective, as, for example, Primavera was saying before. I want to read this quote about this researcher, who is Charlotte Ossicini. And she says, "The choir encourages the viewer's identification, removing the separation between the stage and the audience, and forming a rhythmic, sonic, and spatial immersive substrate." This is a thing that moved the first work I will present. Now I will go to the presentation. But, okay, you can appreciate I also put the desktop with the image of Future DiverCities.
And that's very advanced. Bravo.
I'm making fun of myself because I'm really reciting these things. So the first work I want to present is this sound installation that was, as I was saying, moved by this idea of choir, able to remove the distance between making the sound and receiving it. And it is doing it with a particular sound material. There is, in a sense, reconstructing an idea of choir, because it's not a human choir. It's a choir of animals, and specifically of toads and frogs. And here you can see a picture where I was setting up one of the setups I did with this installation. And now I will move to a specific, exactly. So this work is asking us, what is chorality? And I chose this sound of the frogs and the toads because, of course, it's a really interesting sound. But it gave me the occasion on thinking of a human chorality and voice, because the voices of frogs and toads are really, really similar to the voice, to the human voice, even if we are not used to think of their voices like that. They have a lot in common. In fact, the Indo-European word for frogs has a root that it really means to make a voice, to have a voice. So I chose them because they were able to have a link with the human voice. But not only for that, of course, because they have a kind of capability of evoking something ancient, primordial, existed since every time. And also with the idea of carrying some message not comprehensible if you're not let's say, capable of it. So a kind of mysterious thing. So maybe as Felipe was saying before, so the mysterious as something that moves, a content, and also that is linked to the history, because I really loved the idea of connecting this work with the ancient phonosphere. The phonosphere is, let's say, the world seen by a perspective of sound. So how was sounding in the ancient times of ancient Greeks and Romans the world, and how they were decoding the sounds of animals. They were thinking that some animals were able to carry some messages, some prediction of future. So I love the idea to bring this connection between the past and the present. And an important thing is that I perceived them as they were singing, but of course it's a projection of humanity to think that animals are singing or dancing, for example, for the bees, or for the butterflies. But for example, with the sound, we talked a lot with the songs of the whales, the songs of the birds. And so this work brought me to this question: are the frogs and the toads singing? So this is a thing that I found it very interesting. I composed them, and I brought them in a space with the idea of let the audience enter in a kind of ritual. And so maybe I can, no, wait, a ritual. Let's go to because the very first idea of this work came from, is very linked to the theater. So to the being together in testimony, something that is happening. The theater, we all know that was a kind of ritual for the ancient times. And the genesis of this idea came with putting a lot of speakers in an ancient Greek theater platea. But then I had the possibility of install it in a different context. I will show you something to give you the idea. So I chose to show this work because I remembered also the reaction of the people, of the audience, really questioning, I don't know, their idea of community, of being something unique inside a universal. So how how we can project ourselves in a choir is the same thing. Like we have a single and specific voice, but we also have a unitary voice. Let me go out from here. Okay, of course, I'm really giving glimpse of these things, and if there are, I don't know, a question or something that is not clear later, I'm happy to explain more. Now I will go through another work, which is very, very different because it's a performance. That has a lot of things in common, even if it seems difficult to link them. Of course, they are work about sound, but I also work about chorality. Also, this performance is about chorality, even if the aesthetic is very different. And it has two aspects that I think they're really linked of what we shared. The first thing, of course, is the aspect of sharing something, because this work, even if is authorial, it's a work of mine, and I'm not using sounds arriving from someone else or some other archives. For example, the frogs were coming from a huge archive of people all around the world recorded frogs and toads. But this work, for example, has, I will go fast to this picture and this picture, because the thing is that this work is really an abstract work about voice, spatialized voice, and visualized voice on a blank page with technique stuff as speakers and cables. It's very abstract, but for the reason that is very abstract and for the reason that it uses voices, which is a thing that can lead, we can say, maybe above other things, narratives, and it's very universal. And for the third thing, that the audience is standing all around and it's really participating to the happening. It allows the people to create their narrative in this work and their perception of the work. So it's a kind of act of leaving the freedom of reclaiming that space as a space of also of creation for the audience. And this thing linked to the is very linked to the freedom I had creating this work, because I was really free in imagining this work. And also linked to the fact that it's very graphic, because you can see the, it's not working, okay. You can see on the blank page, there are these elements that really seems like scribbles, or more ordered ones or chaotic ones. It really has a graphic soul, let's say. So this gave us, I'm talking in plural because this is a work of team, the possibility of imagining an expansion of the device for blind and visually impaired people. So let's link with in the topic of inclusion that Primavera was saying before. And the work we did about the blind and visually impaired audience really taught us something about the freedom of seeing what they want to see in a work, because we translated, let's say, the graphic score of the musical and visual part into a tactile storyboard, This is the score of the work of this performance. And this is a translation in a tactile dimension. You can see this is done by, and is done handmade by, I don't know the English for, by carving a piece of plastic and make it, I don't know how to say it, but yes.
Sort of engraved.
Thank you, Martina. And this idea, we found that the community of blind people and visually impaired people, they said to us that they really felt free in creating their space in the performance, and they were completely free of discovering, not following a voice that were telling them now is happening this, now is happening that. They were really into the action, the performative action, as the people who see, actually, because they are really close to the stage, but plus they have the freedom of discovering through tactile. I will share you this, and I will speak meanwhile because it's without audio. This is the first rehearsal we did with this community, and you can see, except this narrative, the people were given.
Agnese, sorry to interrupt you, but we cannot hear the audio part, so we can only see the video.
You don't hear me?
I am not sure if it's just me, but just double checking with the audience.
No, I said that the video is without audio.
Okay, sorry. Then it's okay. Forgive me.
But you hear me, right?
I hear you properly. Yeah.
Also when the video goes. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so the people were given this storyboard, but at the beginning they were just taught how to use it. And during the performance, they were using it through, let's say, to be inside what was happening and discovering what was visually happening, of course, plus the audio, the listening perception of which is even better than ours. And yes, I wanted to share this because it's a thing that we are working on now, and it was really a discovery for me, and it made me question a lot of things about the narrative, so the different also levels of narrative. So I will stop this, and I will go to the last work I want to talk about, which is, as I was saying, the work I did with Adimora project. And how can I link it? I can link it because here again returns the idea of chorality, or let's say to a practice that is chorality, and a practice that was in a way kind of forgotten in this little town near Mugello, but this other vale, which is Val di Sieve. And during my residency there, I chose to go through this popular saying that was saying that this little community in the years had sold the sun because the Vale is very is not that sunny, let's say, to buy a tower clock, because it's a very high tower clock for a small town. So all the people around the area no, at certain point started to say this saying, and I found it very funny, and I found this clock also very interesting, because the inside it's a very old clock with all the old gears, really magic, and in a way, of course, abandoned and forgotten, and carrying a lot of hidden stories, and also periods of the town and the people of the community. In the second page, but it's not changing. Okay, you can see the inside of the clock, and here with these frames on the left, you can see there is a time, there's a timing, because I chose to compose for each hour of the day a stornello, which is an Italian folk form of music and poetry. And I decided to compose a short stornello for each hour, and this stornello to be sung and diffused from the tower. So the tower we were saying before, from the tower through the veil, exactly after the sound of the bells. No, this is okay. So these frames are kind of testimony and giving the idea of the time passing. And for this, maybe I could say another thing. No, I will show you the video that
maybe Agnese, since we are not sure the audio is working and time is almost over, I suggest we share the link to everyone to the video. And sorry, I didn't want to cut,
Sure.
but I just wanted to leave a little bit more of time also for the Q&A. Okay. Thank you, Martina. Just uploaded the video. Okay. So sorry, Agnese, I need to interrupt, but it's
No,
because
sorry.
our time is almost over, and knowing the work, it's good if who's listening to this then go slowly, listen to everything, and I mean it's a nice experience to take time to do it. Okay, not in a rush. So maybe thank you, Agnese. Okay, you showed a lot of beautiful things. Maybe as usual in this kind of talks, we like to end with you questioning things one to the other. Okay, if that's the case. So I don't know. Don't be shy. You're not. I guess if Primavera, Agnese, Felipe, you have something you would like to know more from each other, considering also the big themes we had as a common ground. No? Okay. I see silence. Yeah, okay, please, Primavera, go. Don't be shy. Go.
Yeah, I wanted to maybe ask a little bit more about this definition of chorality from Agnese, and especially maybe get back a little bit on this thing about individual voices inside the universal. Thank you.
Okay, what can I say? Let's say that the voice is something that really defines us as unique, because I have my voice, you have your voice, and your voice is like it's like a mark, it's like a timber of your identity. But in the same time, if we sum the unique voices all together, they become a unitary voice. So at the same time, this can be like an existentialist, from existentialist point of view, from a political point of view, from a sonic point of view. So of course, it's a huge topic. But yes, I really love to stay between these two souls of voice in the chorality dimension. I don't know if I answered what you were saying, Primavera. Yeah.
Okay, and then maybe I think one things that I would love to somehow share, okay, is Felipe presentation made me think, okay, like in your presentation there were some passages where you were saying to somehow suggest to people to think about their connection, reconnection with the earth, really, and understand all the, somehow introduce the native vision of the world in what they were doing, and say their own story about that. Okay, so I found that very, very beautiful. And at the same time, looking also at the work that Agnese did, for example, the last one, no? But also at the introduction that Primavera gave, no? So like people not recognizing their story in La Citadelle, no? So that wanted somehow to bring that out, and it came out after a certain moment, no? Quite naturally. It made me think that maybe one point you might have in common, no? Is really about shifting the method with which we try to support the immersion of narratives, no? So the point is, what is the point of departure? And what do we ask people when we say them, please tell your story, sing me your song, tell me about this building, no? So I don't know, I see this common trait, even if you come from three very different places and experiences, of course, but I see that somehow there is this, I don't know, maybe maeutic is not good work, it calls to Socrates, okay, but somehow also, yes, now this work on trying to make people express and be aware of what's their starting point, their, I would say, epistemic point of view. I don't know if I can call it like that, no? So, and sorry for the big word. So yeah, just maybe around of experiences on that. So what do you think? Is it something you do? And if yes, what is maybe one lesson learned you have, or something you want to leave before we close?
I'm not sure I understood the question properly.
Because it was not really a question; it was more throwing there some elements that can trigger something. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, now I have my microphone open, so I will continue. If it's okay, I feel in general what is happening is we are reflexive actors, and the role that arts has is the art of reflection. To reflect in the two ways, to reflect like an inner reflection, and to reflect like a mirror. And this is somehow what I realize when, as a musician or as a writer, but in any job that we do, when we are reflecting, to reflect the most local of us. That means like local would be if I live in Bogota and I never leave Bogota and I always stay in Bogota, then the local would be the most Bogota possible that lives in me. However, even more local than anything inside of me is also, even growing up in Colombia and in Bogota, the songs of the Beatles reached me, classical music reached me, rock and roll and jazz and blues and everything reached me, and that was local in me. But what I had to make sure to do is that I also went looking for the sounds around my corner. and to be able, me, myself, to make a reflection about what does this do in me? And if I would be sound, how would I sound like? Knowing that all of this is part of this harmony, like Primavera also calls it, no? Like all of these elements are a harmony in myself. All of these multiple cultures exist within us because we are, like the presentation, Kaunquawishi, we are new people. And hopefully in these new people, we don't forget the old narratives or the narratives that have been local and that contain a technology that was developed over thousands of years, and it has a reason to be, to not forget that part of the being. And I feel in art we are doing this, or we should do this, to reflect and to search for what is around the corner as well and what is inside myself.
Thank you. Thanks, Felipe.
Mm.
And I don't know if there aren't any other reactions or remarks. I don't know. Primavera, it's okay like that? You tell me something you want to add? No, it's okay. Well, I hope this. Agnese, please.
But a really short thing about the thing that was sharing Primavera with her last slide about the role of artist, about being the messiah or something like that. Of course, I think it was a provoking something because yes, art doesn't have to bring necessarily harmony. It can, but of course, art has also to question, to disturb sometimes. So I didn't want to leave this slide unanswered. So yes, please let's say that and agree to that. Just think this thing. No, I don't want to.
No, but thank you for revamping that. It was an important point. I just didn't want to put it in front because I wanted you to react also to those tricky questions. No, but yeah, I think also from an external perspective, I'm not an artist, but also the role of being one of the stakeholders. What does it mean then? Because then you do have some also intermediary roles as an artist, especially if you work with relations, no? So, I mean, it's a very, very subtle limit you cross if you try just to mediate and not to produce art, let's say. And it's important to consider what that entails, no? So I think the question is good that you answered, and I know that now also Felipe will react, but let's say it's okay also if it's unanswered, because I guess this is what we should be questioning when acting, no, in the cultural practices. Felipe?
Yeah, I just listening to artists and non-artists. Something I like from German language is that art, the word art, actually means way, a way of doing, an art of, a way of. And then for artists, actually, there's another word called Künstler, and to recognize that it is an art, the way we're living. And I feel this is also part of what is touching this mysticism. We're all artists. And to be able to integrate that into our lives, to make the magic out of it, to make an art out of it, it doesn't matter what role we have. Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Well, well, I think that's the best ending we could have, okay, to our talk. No, I'm so really sorry to cut, but just because we went a little bit already ahead of time. So I thank you again for participating in this conversation. I invite you to join the next ones. Our next one will be in September. We always try to choose the third Wednesday of a month, okay, but we are having a summer break. And it will be very interesting because it will be on mapping and alternative mapping tools. Okay, so it will be very hands-on and practical. We'll see different tools and different approaches to mapping public spaces. This reminds me, we haven't talked enough, for example, about the concept of common, okay, Primavera, that was very, very, very important. But I'm happy because it means we are leaving something for next talk, because talking about how to map a public space will also be somehow a way to talk about what do people define as common, especially in participatory mapping, no? So I'm happy that not all conversation closes here. Some will go on in next talks, and I invite you to be there. And again, thank you. Thanks a lot for inspiring us today. And see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.